think we brought up the other day some guy that I know named Jaime Casillas who used to be around there, the gym. What do you remember about Jaime there?
Jaime saw me start from the beginning, and he was a quiet guy, and he was nice enough to give me pointers when I was screwing up, when I was doing something wrong, and in the way that I was training. He had a very subtle way of letting me know that I could do this way, or that somebody did this that way, and he didn't do it directly or offensively. It was very encouraging, because every time I would go home and I would think, hey, wait a minute, this guy said this, and oh, okay, he said it because of that, or he's saying this because he saw this, and stuff like that. I would put the puzzle together after. And so, yeah, Jaime was a big help to me, because he knew more about boxing than I did, and I was in a position where I was in charge of a boxing club, and with minimal knowledge, but a lot of drive and a lot of enthusiasm.
And a little bit ago, when we were talking about Robert and how you kind of went out there for the first time on his first big show, and his dad was pretty much in the background, and he kind of stayed in the background. At what point did his dad start being up there a little closer to the action, and like a trainer like you are? At what point did he start kind of like coming on to what you were doing also?
Well, he started, I think it was in 1987. He would always, he always worked. He always worked, and he had his job. He came out pretty tired from his job, but sometimes he would come around, and I saw in him a kind of trainer that he could be. I would ask him, hey, why don't you train more guys? Why don't you come over here and help me train this guy? And he would say, oh man, I don't know anything about that. I'm just training this little kid right here. And little by little, I would start inviting him more and more to come up to the gym, and I offered him a job as my assistant. And he used to say, "Oh, Martin, I don't know nothing about this. We're gonna be." He didn't think that he was a good enough trainer to have a position of a trainer, working for the city. I would go to his house and tell him that all he had to do was just show up for 2-3 hours, and that was all, and I would give him so much, of tell him what the position offered. And it took me a while, but I convinced him. I finally convinced him. I remember I took all the paperwork over to him so he could just sign it, and he didn't have to do anything else. He just signed the paperwork, and he was hired.
So in a way, you kind of had to instill that confidence in him so he could come out and do what you were doing also.
Yeah, and he can't, he was he was a very devoted family man. One of the things that I admire about Mr. Garcia was the way that he held his family together, the way that how close they were. That was something to admire. The way this man, the way he ran his life and his family.
And something that Jaime would tell me, I don't know if you were around at that time, but he said that actually Danny, Robert's older brother, Danny was actually a really good fighter. It's just that he decided to do like other things, or he just wasn't as disciplined. Do you remember seeing Danny at all, like in the ring or around boxing?
Yeah, I was in Danny's last 4 fights, I believe, and I was in his corner in his last 4 fights.
Do you remember the name Mario Solorio?
Mario Solorio, yeah, Mariano Solorio. Yeah, I worked with him too. It's a funny story with him. When I started training him, we were training to fight this southpaw from Santa Barbara, George Calderon, and so we're training, and Mario's looking vicious in the gym. He's beating everybody up, and he's just doing real good. And then we went to go fight. The day of the fight, we go up there, and I'm confident, because we've been doing our work. And so he goes up there, and he barely threw punches throughout the whole fight. He was just, going after him and getting beat up a little, and going after him and taking punches and not really letting go. And I'm like, what the heck's wrong with this guy? I told him I'd try to, get him to loosen up, smack him a little bit to see if he could wake up, but nothing. And so then later on, I found out that Mario would eat a big steak right before the fight. Or, before the fight.
Wow.
And then I told him, why the heck are you eating a big steak on the day of the fight, period? And he told me that because his trainer, told him that will make him strong. The trainer that he had before. That was a philosophy they had back then, way back then, about eating a steak. And that's why a lot of the old fights are boring.
That's what Roberto Duran's excuse was for saying no mas to Ray Leonard was having a piece of steak in a cold glass of water, which gave him cramps during the fight, and that's why he said no mas.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to tell you about Fernando. When Fernando came into the boxing program, we were having these monthly boxing shows at the Elks Lodge. Do you remember that?
I remember watching it on TV on the local channel, and actually I remember interviews with him saying that that's where he got his interest, watching it on TV.
Exactly.
And he was suspended from school one day, and he was watching that on TV, and he said, I'm suspended from school. I could actually be going to do that. Let me walk my butt up 6 miles to go over to the La Colonia gym, go find out how to train. And that's how he got into going to La Colonia gym, is by watching those fights on TV from the Elks Club.
Yeah. Those fights at the Elks Club were finally a result of all that work. Because I used to put on a lot of boxing shows, and I remember that I was at the gym and the phone rang, and it was Fernando at the other end. And, he sounded kind of desperate. And he said, I saw the boxing on TV and this and that. He goes, what do I have to do? Can I go over there and can I go and be like those kids on TV and box like them and this and that? And I told him, I said, well, you can. I said, you come down here and try it out. And I told him what the program is, what we do. And that kid was there about 10 minutes later. He was there soaked in sweat with his hair standing straight up. And he was ready. And so, got him to some exercise, took him to the bag room. And he was beating on that bag, man, it was like a little machine, right away. I mean, right away he was catching. He was just serious about it. Man, the Elks Lodge, it was a lot of fun for a lot of kids because, we had the Jones dinner table there, and they interviewed them and took pictures of them and made it look real professional. And this is and remember that 4 years before that, 5 years before that, we couldn't get anybody to come up here. The only people who would come out were somebody from El Rio, somebody from Ventura, maybe Santa Barbara, and we couldn't put a couple of fights. We could only put like 3, 4, maybe 5 fights together. And it was these guys fighting each other again and again. So from going to LA and taking this group of kids that we had, we had an outstanding team. We had a lot of boxers, and we were always going out there and kicking some butt. So we were getting known all over Southern California, because everywhere we went, we walked in with a little army of kids. One time they came out on the USA Boxing newsletter that used to come out. They called me the Pied Piper of Oxnard.
Wow.
Yeah, that's on one of the articles. If you look back to somewhere between 85 and 89 or something like that, I think there's an article where they interviewed one of the officials, and they're saying that it's a pleasure to see me walk in here, because every time I walk in, I got a whole trail of kids with me.
And I think the other day you brought up something like that you still get some respect from ex-fighters that used to fight for you, or friends of yours from around here or whatever. How good does that feel to actually get that from people that remember you since your beginnings, your humble beginnings?
Yeah, you know what? Well, of course it's the feeling of these guys, remembering me and wanting to say hi to me, because they have reached me and they have contacted me, and that brings a knot to my throat. And it's man, of course it's a great feeling. But I remember there was people that had money that used to come to the program, and they used to love what we were doing with the kids. They said, "Man, this is great. This is and then they would tell you, Martin, if I can help, let me know. I'd like to help, with the kids and this and that." And I remember I had these kids that I could tell they were broke. They were wearing high water pants all the time and messed up tennis shoes. And so I wouldn't even try to charge them for membership fees to that. I could tell they were just not doing very good. And so some of these, during the holidays, some of these friends, that offered to help, and I would call them back and say, hey, remember you offered to help, and, to help if I knew some of these kids needed some help. And, I got some of his money, and I went and I bought turkeys and teddy shoes for these kids, and I know that these kids are I know that they remember me, I know that they remember that, and they're touched by it. But I was just lucky enough to be able to have friends that were willing to help them, and I was right there to lend that hand. So yeah, that's very touching.
Yeah, beautiful moment, beautiful thought there to have, for everything you gave up for, these kids, for this sport, for the community, just in general, or for your humanity. It's always a beautiful thing to lay a happy hand. And trust me, people always do remember, and they will always, be thankful for stuff like this. And I'm, tearing up just thinking about, what it does mean to kids. And I walked into La Colina gym for the first time in a few years today. And, before I talked to you, to kind of get the feel of that I was going to be talking to you. And, from you saying that, and from seeing from seeing the few kids that I saw in the gym, I could picture who you were helping, because I'm sure it was kids just like those.
Yeah.
From what you see in Oxnard today, I'm sure you see all the lights, all the cameras, that everything that's been brought to boxing here in Oxnard. Do you feel like you also deserve some of that because you were a part of that in a way, in this historical way that we've all been talking about since, like you said, you entered here in 1985? Do you feel like you deserve some of that too?
There's been times when I felt that way, but I didn't stick around long enough. And so if I would have stuck around long enough, I think if I would have stuck around another year or two,
you would have been here for the party.
Yeah, yeah, but that's my. They say everything happens for a reason, and I agree. I'm really, really happy and proud of all the people that I've known that have taken part in this, and that have made boxing what it is. I mean, the Garcias have done. They have. It's like a dynasty. They have done more work than a lot of trainers put together have done in their lifetime, and that's very symbolic.
A lot of people didn't know why exactly, why you left here in the first place. Like, a lot of people might try to say something like, well, he must have left because Eduardo came in, or that there might have been bad blood. I mean, just to take care of that, there was no kind of bad blood between you and Eduardo, or that's the reason why you left in the first place at all, right?
No. I left for the reason that I told you, and like I said earlier, before I fell in love with when I went to Rosarito, I fell in love with it over there, and and plus, the problems I had in my wife, I kind of saw it like, I guess it's turning this way, and I went with it. But even a year or 2 years, 2 years after, Mr. Garcia and Robert Garcia, when Robert was about to become world champion, they invited me and they asked me. They would always send me tickets. I mean, they would always, send me, and they would always invite me to the fights, and they would take care of me with a room and meals and all that. If it was in Vegas or wherever it was at, they would really take care of me with T-shirts and everything. They wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me down for nothing, and they also invited me and asked me more than once to come back and become a part of the team, because they, even Fernando, when he became a world champion, he called me and he told me that I'm the one that's supposed to be up there with him, that they're doing what we had set out to do a long time ago, and they wanted me to be there with them. And man, I cannot give you a besides that, I was living in Mexico and I had a ranch and I had, I was raising my family over there. I had, horses and chickens and all that, and I was, I
You were
loved.
living the dream over there.
Yeah, I was living my dream over there, but it was. As a matter of fact, I did come for about 3 weeks because Fernando talked me into it. He asked me, come over here, and he asked me to come more than a couple of occasions, and I went and I started, working out of the Colonia Boxing Club again, helping around with the kids, and I was going to become a part of the team with Fernando and all that, and I was going to help. I was going to be helping them, right? But then, I had just gotten married. I had a new wife over there at the ranch, and she was pregnant, about to have a kid, and so I would be here for a week, and then I would go back over there for the weekend, and so I would go, I would go over there, go home for the weekend, come back, and one of those times that I went home for the weekend, my son was born, and so I just couldn't come back after that.
See, this is why I needed to talk to you about it, to bring all this out, because this is all like that. That's something that fills those holes. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
people can finally walk through that smooth floor. And that's what we needed, is because I didn't know any what to believe, what not to believe, and you can't go wrong with hearing it straight from the source. And it's a great thing you came on to do this, man. Whenever you hear the name Oxnard, or watch it on
I'm
TV, or it's
proud.
brought up,
I am
what are the
proud.
first things that come to your mind?
I am proud. I'm proud to have been there, and I can say that I was there when it started. And I contributed a little bit, but I contributed, and I thank a lot of people that remember that, because I get comments all the time from people that say, oh, Martin's back. Yeah, that guy helped. That guy's the one that did this, and that guy's the one that did that. And I was just fortunate enough to be there and have the support of everybody that supported us.
Where you working at? Where are your playing grounds at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I train at Ponce de Leon's boxing gym in the morning. From 9 to 1. I got a couple of guys that I'm working with there. I got Robert Alvarez, we're getting ready for Trump Pro. I've been training him since he was 13, and I help out with some of the other pros there. And then in the afternoon, I train kids in South Central LA at the Century Station Boxing Gym, right there on Florence and McKee.
Do you regret any of that? Any of that help that you've given these kids? Any of those memories that you've given these kids to mature in their adult life, or just in their life in general? Do you regret any of that? From helping these kids out.
You know what? Every time, I think I've always been a kid. Deep down inside, I'm always like a kid myself. I'm always playing around, goofing around, and my son. I got a 14-year-old son, Josue, that told me the other day that out of all the adults in my family, I'm the only one that acts like a little kid. And so in the beginning, I took it like an insult. I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah," but he goes, "That means you're more fun to be around with." And so I've always, I had a lot of fun with these kids. I had a lot of fun with them, and I remember one of the things that we used to do every year, and we never missed it. It was every year that I was there, and we used to go. I used to take them to the mountains every year to go to the snow. And every kid that I run into that knows me from back then, they always remember that. They always tell me, "Remember we used to go to the snow?" Because, the snow is something that a lot of kids never experience, or a lot of people never experience, but especially kids. There's a lot of kids in Colonia that have never even been out of Oxnard, for the most part. So I used to take the city van with about 20-something kids in it. I packed it in illegally, but, I couldn't turn away these kids. And back then, it wasn't, I don't think they even had the seatbelt laws back then. Not yet. And so we would go every year, and we go to Gorman, and they play for a few hours up there in the snow, and they come back, and they give them a sandwich and some hot chocolate. And then we will come down to Pyramid Lake, and we'll go in there and play around. And they would, even though it was ice, it was cold. They would still go in the water and swim and run around the park, and just have a great time while I made hamburgers for them. And so, yeah, they always remember that. These guys are almost 40 years old, and those are fond memories for them and fond memories for me. So you can't regret something like that.
And if I asked you to describe your whole stay here, or I guess helping that you did here in Oxnard with boxing, and what you thought of it, and how you would want to be remembered here in Oxnard, to the people that always ask, because believe it or not, I mean, to me it's an honor, number one, to have you on and actually talk to you, because I had heard of you, for years, but I had never actually got to talk to you until now. And you've taught me a lot of who you are, what you've done here, and who you ran across. But if I asked, how would you want to be remembered to the people here, people that you might have helped here and touched here in Oxnard and in boxing and all, how would you want to be remembered?
Well, I know that I'm a person with a very harsh tone, and a lot of people are easily turned off by the tone with which I talk when I'm training. When I'm training, I'm very, very demanding, and so I get fired up, and when I'm training, I get fired up. I want to get on a roll, and I want to stay on a roll. And so that means everybody working hard, everybody making progress, and everybody pushing at the same time. That was what you'd seen when you were walking through the gym back then. If you saw the gym packed, really, really packed, there was no room, but everybody was working hard, and everybody was soaked in sweat, and there was talent being produced.
And from what I've read, you actually had to shoo away people because it was so packed in there too.
Yeah, oh yeah, we couldn't accommodate everybody. We couldn't.
And I think from everything that I've heard from what you're saying, and like I said, I knew nothing about you before I actually got to talk to you today. I'm glad I got to talk to you, and everybody here in the La Colonia area that I remember from about my age and older. I remember who you were, what you did here. They're the ones that told me about you. They're the ones that told me that I should reach out to you and look for you. And because I have this website, and because I wanted to actually get to talk to you and get your point of view to let them know, hey, I did find him, and this is what he had to say. I'm glad I got to talk to you, man, and I'm glad I got your point of view. I'm glad I got to hear what you got to say about everything, tell these stories that even you got emotional that I could tell, from telling. But that's how much you care for these people, for the sport, and for everybody in between, man, and I appreciate it very much.
Hey, well, thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the time to tell my story. I'm very grateful for that, and I hope that all those people that I work with, all those kids that I work with, are big grown men now. I wish them all the luck in the world, and I send all my love to them.
Much appreciated, my brother. Thank you for your story. I hope to talk to you down the line again, and whenever you're around here, man, let us know that you're around so we can reach out to you, brother.
Sure, I'll probably be going out there in a week or two.
Sounds good.